Down in southwest United States of America, we have different kinds of lizards, and a couple of those are very interesting. One of them, called the gecko lizard, has some very special characteristics. Its feet. Now, if you have a little pet gecko lizard, and they're friendly little things.
That, sir, is complete and utter bollocks. Not all geckos are friendly. I got waxed by one in Thailand 2008. I wish I was joking. They're living animals just like any others, and therefore have varying temperaments. I am personally disappointed at you, Jobe Martin, for your lack of knowledge on gecko diversity. Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Essence of Forte, and of course I'm continuing with my series, Less Than Amazing Creationists Who Defy Logic. So with that said, and I'm sure this is going to be a blast, let us continue.
You can watch that. It'll run right across your ceiling. You could have a ceiling made of glass, and it'll just run right across the ceiling. It doesn't fall off. Gravity does not pull it off. And so the scientists, for many years, they just didn't know what makes that lizard be able to stick like it does. So they took its feet, which are a special kind of feet, and they magnified the feet. And they discovered on these feet there are like little hairs, little tufts of hairs. And so they thought, well, that's not enough. And that was with 2,000 magnifications. And they said, well, that's not enough. There's something else here. So they put it under phase electron microscope, these little hairs, and they kept magnifying them and magnifying them. They got up to 35,000 magnifications, and all of a sudden, there was the answer. All over these little hairs are tiny little suction cups. But you have to magnify them 35,000 times just to see the suction cup. Now, these suction cups are so powerful that if the foot was not made in a special way, when that gecko, let's say, put his foot up against the ceiling, it would just suck it right up against there, and he's stuck. He's not moving. So his foot had to be made in such a way that he can use other parts of his foot to pop loose those suction cups. So what he'll do is, and if you look at the foot of a gecko, it looks different than a normal lizard. Most lizards have kind of finger-like with big nails on them, and the gecko, though, has like these little rounded pads on its foot, and it can take those feet, and they're almost kind of rounded on the bottom, so that it can, for instance, use the suction cups in the front to pop up the ones in the back, or it can use them on the side to pop up the other side. And so it just does it naturally, but that's what's going on. How would a lizard evolve little 35,000 times it takes to see the magnifications? How would it evolve that? And why would it evolve that? And why would it have the right kind of a foot that has to be there if it's going to have those suction cups? All of that had to be there all at once.
Why? I mean, rather obviously, the feet started off merely utilizing surface friction of the entire foot as opposed to hooking claws of many reptiles. This adaptation isn't all too extreme. Merely a reduction of the claws and the gradual thickening of the digit could accomplish this, possibly assisted by the flattening of the body, as we see many geckos have very flat bodies. Now, as evolution and natural selection took its course, there would be variations in the surface of the feet, very minute variations that would enable some individuals to climb higher up surfaces or up steeper surfaces than others, away from predation on the ground, and therefore these features would be refined via selection of the fittest, and over millions of years they would get to the point they are today. As for sticking, due to the gradual development of these pores, which later became the pads, it would allow for gradual alterations in the feet structure and ability, i.e. to allow it to pick bits off. In ancestors that had reasonable grip, yet not too powerful, these mechanisms would allow for faster movement, thus increasing their chances of survival via escaping predators. That is how, Mr. Martin. That is how.
And then we have this other lizard. He's called the Chuckawalla lizard. And he has really three different distinctives that make him special. One of them is he has almost like a blanket across his back of skin. And this skin changes color. He'll start out in the morning and it'll be dark. And that means it absorbs more sunlight, because he's a cold-blooded animal and he needs to be able to get his blood warmed up so he can run away from his enemies and things. And so it'll warm him up But later on in the afternoon, in the desert, when the sun is really hot, it turns a light beige color, and it reflects the sun so that his blood doesn't boil.
This is actually true. They do change coloration due to the thermal temperature in much the same way that we as humans with our arm and leg hair stands up when we get cold. The same goes for mood. Their colour changes with their mood in the same way that, yes, again, our arm and leg hair can also shift with our mood. It's just the reptilian version of a mammalian feature. So, you know, any slight change or variation would have been beneficial in a climate where a few drops of water a year can mean the difference between life and death. Thus, over time, this would have easily been compacted, and the lizards would have been able to go into deeper and more arid regions of the desert.
Now he has a defense mechanism. Let's say a coyote wants to eat one of these little lizards, and they do try to eat these lizards. He will run into it like a crack in the rocks, and he expands his body kind of like a blowfish. He will blow his body up, and he's now stuck in there, and they can't get him out. There's no way to pull it out of there. It just kind of conforms to the cracks in there, his defense mechanism.
Many animals use running into holes and crevices as a defense mechanism, and also many animals use attempting to increase their size to deter predators as a defense mechanism. In an environment which is very rocky, this could rather easily become the instinctive behavior you mention. Nothing miraculous here.
But the thing I like about the chuckwalla lizard is his desalination factory. Now that means he has too much salt in his blood. Why? Well, because he lives in the desert and there's no water, so he doesn't have anything to drink. So as he eats plants and little animals, little insects, he begins to build up salt. And as the salt builds up, it's enough to kill him. Now when does he know he has too much salt? Well, when he gets too much salt, what does that do? It kills him. So survival of the fittest. You see, he's out of here, but he's not. Why? Because God made a little factory in his nose. It's a little desalination factory. It's a little factory that will, as the blood builds up salt, all of a sudden he thinks, I think I need to get the salt out of my blood. I think I'll run it through my factory. So he shunts the blood. He detours the blood through this little factory. And that little factory takes the salt out of his blood. Now every now and then, the chuckwalla lizard, he goes, achoo, and he sneezes pure salt crystals.
This is a process of homeostasis, i.e. the internal balancing of a number of factors and variables, in this case, salt levels. This isn't a feature restricted to this lizard, or even lizards as a whole. There are actually turtles and snakes which also share this salinity control feature. See, reptiles originated from their amphibian ancestors who were tied to the water, often fresh, and thus excess salt would not have been such an issue. But the feature of being able to get rid of excess salt would indeed allow for these first few reptiles to move further and further away from stable water sources, increasing their niches gradually through an adaptation that cropped up. In this case, nasal salt glands.
Now I think you could take a chuckwalla lizard, put him on your dining room table, and say, okay, Chuck, we need a little salt here. And there you go. We've got pure salt from a lizard's sneezes. I think that's incredible. He is another one of the incredible creatures that our Lord has made.
Okay, apparently the editor decided that was something amazing on your cheek.
What's the most complex creature? Has to be you and me.
What? Clearly, my friend, you have not been paying attention to Mr. Martin's talk for the last 50 minutes. We are outdone in nearly every aspect of our biology, save our mental capacity, by other animals. And let's just be honest about the mental capacity here. That's not too perfect either. I mean, if it was, people like Mr. Martin would not be making children's mockumentaries. If there is a God, they are surely laughing their asses off at the misfortune that has befallen me in taking on you nitwits.
How did we get here? Are we distant cousins to the apes? Or were we designed by a creator? And if so, is the Bible's account of creation actually possible?
We are not related to apes, we are apes. We are distant cousins to the other great apes. Get that right.
If we look at the Genesis account, of God's creation of man. He says he made man fully mature. Adam, when we first meet him, full grown man, only 1 minute old. It says he took a rib and made Eve. Now some Christian people say, I can have evolution, I can have the Bible. Well, now we have a problem. Are there any evolutionists that teach that women evolved from ribs? Well, of course not.
Mr. Jobe Martin, I am outstanded at your sudden progress. That was one factual accuracy on the theory of evolution. It does not assert that women came from ribs due to there being no evidence of such a phenomenon. Give credit where credit is due. Your 1-hour documentary, created in attempts to defeat evolution, got a single fact of evolution correct. Well done. It does not include women from ribs.
But that's what the Bible says. It says God took a rib and made Eve. Now, when Adam wakes up from his anesthetic and sees Eve, she's full grown. She's 2 seconds old, but she's full grown. If we believe the biblical account, we have to believe God will create full-grown creatures, of which man is one of those creatures. I might add, can our Creator do that kind of thing? The Bible tells us in 3 places Jesus is the Creator. Colossians 1, Hebrews 1, John 1. So Jesus is the Creator. Well, then he created man full-grown, had the appearance of age. He was fully mature. Woman, full-grown, fully mature. Trees, full-grown. Peaches on them. Eve could have eaten a peach. Adam, how long does it take to grow a peach like that? 3 days, Eve. Well, that can't be. Yes, God made the tree with the ripe fruit 3 days ago. If we're going to believe the creation account, as Genesis puts it, we have to believe that. Now, did Jesus the Creator have the ability to do that? Well, what are his miracles? His first miracle, John 2, turns water into wine. He used 6 water pots, it says in John chapter 2, and when the head waiter tasted that water, he said, well, this is the best wine. Well, how do you make good wine? Well, you have to age it. Well, how old is it? 1 minute old. How many water pots? 6. How many days in the creation week? 6. Creation with the appearance of age in Genesis 1. Creation of wine with the appearance of age in John chapter 2. I don't think that's an accident.
Sadly for you, personal incredulity is not really evidence.
Now, how did he make man? Well, let's just think about our ear. First of all, you look at a human ear and you think, that's a strange thing. I mean, we have these things that are here, and then you look at the animals, and they all have ears, and yet not all animals do. Many animals hear without ears, but we have ears. Now, the human eardrum is just a marvel. It moves such a small amount that you really can't measure it. Some scientists have said the movement of the eardrum with the different sounds hitting it is about the same as 1/100th the width of a hydrogen molecule.
I would very much like to know the source of this claim, because I mean, I don't doubt for a second that it is a very slight amount of movement that is necessary. But the quantity that you gave is beyond absurd, and I'm going to say, this one gave me a lot of trouble and difficulty in finding out. I could only find one other creationist arguing that the movement was equal to that of a hydrogen molecule as opposed to 1/100th. But conveniently, this is one of the lines that they did not source at all. The fact is that, no, you don't need a great amount of particle movement to detect or even make sound. You see, sound is consisted of waves, and the fact is, due to the fact that the eardrum doesn't move that much, it allows for these waves to be detected. If you can imagine the eardrum with a wider range of distance that the eardrum had to travel, then it would not be able to pick the waves up in such a rapid way that could process the sound properly. Because the distance is so small, it can move back and forth as quick as it is required to detect these waves. So it's actually not so much a miracle of it, it's a requirement. It requires a very small distance to be able to detect sounds as they are.
That's one of the smallest molecules. So that little teeny bit of movement can tell the difference between a trumpet, a bass drum, your mother telling you to go make your bed, your daddy telling you you can't have the car tonight because you didn't get in on time last night. And that little bit of movement differentiates between all those different sounds and then goes right into our brain, and our brain tells us, this is mama talking, this is daddy speaking, this is the symphony orchestra, and we can hear music. We can hear someone say, I love you, which we all love to hear. How? With just not even the width of a hydrogen molecule of movement. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. And that's right there inside of our head.
No, that's not a miracle, unless your definition of a miracle wanes with age or is very easily disrupted or even responsible for hallucinations due to infrasound. Ears fundamentally detect molecular pressure changes in our environment, typically through the air, in the same way that fish can detect such changes in the water. It's just gradually changed and adapted as we have become terrestrial creatures rather than aquatic. So yeah, we can actually map out how hearing developed.
Our eye, same kind of a thing. I mean, scientists have not been able to duplicate what our eye does.
About that. Artificial eyes are coming along to a point that, yes, someday the transhumanistic prospect of technological augmentation may be a thing due to how poor the human eye actually is, with the prospect of how unclear it is. To us, it may seem rather clear, because this is the sight we have known our entire lives. But the truth is that there are countless blood vessels across our eye in front of the lens, which act like sugar paper to dampen the actual sight and make things more difficult to see. Our brain is hot-wired to try and process as much as it's out. So, yeah, it's not a really good design. We could make better ones eventually, quite easily.
They cannot make a lens on a camera, and I imagine photographers would like to have a lens like that it sees clearly far away, it sees clearly up close, if we're talking a good eye, not one that has pathology or it needs glasses.
Oh, you mean like a camera lens, you know, the ones that can focus in and out, just like the eye can? We have actually created these that are superior to our eyesight. I mean, just go back to the gecko thing that you did earlier. The way that we can't see the feet of the gecko with a naked eye, but we can use certain microscopic cameras to do that for us. And then look to the stars, look at telescope and telescopic cameras, and the way that we cannot see the distance like they can, but because they have been designed in such a way, they are superior to our eye in the amount of distance they can see. You know, that really does not make a good argument for you. As for pathology, you don't just get to brush that under the rug. That is a major design flaw, courtesy of your apparent deity.
The eye is constantly, it's like this. It's vibrating all the time. And yet the images that we see, they aren't doing this. They are steady. Well, how does that happen? Well, it's the way God put the whole eye together with the various muscles that are in there and the ways that it contacts through your ophthalmic nerve and goes to your brain, and we see things and the image is flipped, and they've done experiments where they put glasses on people and they flip everything upside down, and within 2 weeks' time a person with those kind of glasses can drive a car, and his brain is compensated for all that. And you think of just the way the human body works. How would that evolve?
Steadily over a long period of time, starting off as basic light-sensing pigments, which gradually became more and more advanced with each generation, leading to a number of key point stages which we can see throughout the fossil record, and even today in modern species, from lower order crustaceans all the way up to the birds of prey, and of course the most epic mantis shrimps, those psychotic little bastards of rainbow death.
Now, when we think about this, we've looked at quite a few creatures, and you look at those things and you start to think, how could that be? Is that the result of an impersonal, chance, random process? Or could it be there's actually a designer, some power that had the genius to design all of these little things so that they actually work, and every part works with all the other parts, and it all comes out with these marvelous creatures that defy evolution in every single way? I think it proves that there is a designer, and I think I know his name, and I think he wants to have a relationship with each one of us, and I think he's penetrated his time and his space in the person of his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, who is the designer and the maker, who has the power and has the genius to do all of this.
99.9% of all species that have ever existed, both plant and animal, have died out. That is a stupidly poor success rate remaining. That 99.9% plus is highly suggestive of a process which relies upon gradual adaptation over generations, spreading out among populations, leading to competition and even extinction. Just think about it.
Well, there you have it. Animals are a lot more complex and interesting than I realized. Dr. Martin has a point. The next time you look at all this beauty, realize that this is no accident.
So you chose major fuck up in design over naturalistic probability, when all evidence points to the latter. Don't be such a smug git about being openly delusional. It does not impress. So yes, that is the end of this series. I hope you guys have enjoyed Less Said Amazing Creationists Who Defy Logic. So, if you'd like to support my work, then please check out my Patreon. Don't forget to click a like, comment, subscribe, and also share on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Google+. Also, you can check out my own Facebook and Twitter, as I do post updates there now and then. So yes, this is Essence of Thought, hoping you're all doing well. Take care and out.